The moment Jake Mitchell slid into the chair across from Eliza Harrington, both their lives changed forever, though neither knew it yet. He was covered in motor oil despite his best efforts to clean up, wearing the only decent shirt he owned. She sat in her wheelchair, elegant in a designer dress that cost more than his monthly rent, wondering why this disheveled stranger was at her table instead of her actual blind date. If you've ever believed that fate works in mysterious ways, this story might just prove it. Stay with me until the end to discover how one simple mistake led to a love story that defied all odds, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to see more incredible true stories that will warm your heart and restore your faith in humanity. Jake checked his watch for the 5th time, nervously adjusting his collar as he scanned the upscale restaurant. The Ivory Room was far beyond his usual haunts, a place where the silverware probably cost more than his toolbox. But his sister had insisted this blind date would be good for him, practically forcing him to agree. After 3 years of throwing himself into work at his struggling auto repair shop following Sarah's death, maybe it was time to try again. "Table for Mitchell?" he asked the hostess, trying to sound like he belonged. She barely glanced up from her tablet. "Yes, your party is already seated. Follow me." Jake trailed behind her, acutely aware of his calloused hands and the lingering scent of motor oil that never quite washed away. He'd spent an hour scrubbing, but some stains were permanent. The hostess gestured toward a table where a young woman sat alone, her wheelchair positioned at an angle that initially wasn't visible from his approach. "Here you are, sir," the hostess said before disappearing. Jake hesitated for just a moment before taking his seat. The woman was beautiful, with chestnut hair falling in soft waves around a heart-shaped face and intelligent eyes that studied him with obvious surprise. "Hi, I'm Jake," he said, extending his hand. "Sorry if I'm a little late." Eliza Harrington tilted her head slightly, confusion evident in her expression. "I'm Eliza," she replied, shaking his hand with a firm grip that surprised him. "And I think there's been a mistake." Before Jake could respond, a waiter appeared with water and menus. "Can I get you something from the bar while you decide?" "Just water for now," Jake said quickly, mentally calculating how much he could afford to spend. His auto shop was barely staying afloat, and this restaurant was well beyond his budget. After the waiter left, Eliza leaned forward. "I'm supposed to be meeting someone named Richard. My father's assistant arranged it." Jake felt his face flush with embarrassment. "Oh God, I'm at the wrong table. The hostess just brought me over. I'm supposed to be meeting someone named Melissa." They stared at each other for a moment before Eliza unexpectedly laughed, a genuine, musical sound that made the knot in Jake's stomach loosen slightly. "Well, Jake, not Richard, it seems we've both been stood up. Or there's another mix-up happening somewhere else in this restaurant." Jake should have apologized and left to find his actual date. Instead, he found himself smiling back at this woman whose eyes sparkled with amusement rather than judgment. "Probably for the best," he admitted. "I'm pretty sure I don't belong in a place like this anyway." Eliza's expression softened. "And why's that?" Jake glanced down at his hands, clean but still bearing the telltale dark lines around his nails that marked him as someone who worked with his hands. "Let's just say I'm more comfortable under a car hood than reading a wine list." "A mechanic?" she asked. "Owner of Mitchell's Auto Repair," he said with a hint of pride that surprised even him. Though owner sounds more impressive than the reality. "It's just me and one part-time helper in a small garage downtown." Eliza studied him with renewed interest. "Honestly? That sounds far more interesting than another finance guy or lawyer my father's trying to set me up with." Just then, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A flustered man in an expensive suit was speaking urgently to the hostess, who was pointing in their direction. Behind him stood a woman who looked increasingly uncomfortable. "I think our actual dates have found each other," Eliza observed dryly. Jake watched as the man, presumably Richard, approached their table with the woman, presumably Melissa, trailing behind. "Eliza Harrington?" Richard asked, completely ignoring Jake. "I'm Richard Pembroke." There seems to have been a mix-up. Melissa looked at Jake apologetically. And you must be Jake? I'm so sorry about the confusion. An awkward silence fell over the four of them until Eliza smoothly took control. Richard, Melissa, it seems you two have already met. Why don't you take a table together? Jake and I were just getting acquainted, and I'd hate to interrupt our conversation. Jake stared at her in surprise, but Eliza just gave him a small, conspiratorial smile. Richard looked between them, clearly confused. But your father arranged. My father arranges many things, Eliza cut in, her voice pleasant but firm. Please give my regards to Melissa. I'm sure you'll have a lovely evening. After another moment of awkward silence, Richard and Melissa retreated, both looking relieved to escape the situation. You didn't have to do that, Jake said once they were alone again. Eliza shrugged. Richard is my father's golf partner's son. Trust me, I did us both a favor. She picked up her menu. Now, since we're both here, shall we have dinner? I promise not to hold your profession against you if you don't hold my wheelchair against me. Jake felt a rush of admiration for her directness. Deal. Though I should warn you, I might need help deciphering this menu. What exactly is sous vide? Eliza laughed again, and Jake found himself thinking it was the most beautiful sound he'd heard in years. As dinner progressed, Jake learned that Eliza was the daughter of Victor Harrington, CEO of Harrington Industries, a name even he recognized as one of the largest corporations in the city. She had been paralyzed from the waist down in a car accident 3 years ago, the same year Jake had lost his wife to cancer. They discovered a shared love of classic films, dry humor, and surprisingly, vintage cars. My father collects them, Eliza explained. I grew up learning about engines and transmissions. It drove my mother crazy that I could talk carburetors with the mechanics but couldn't remember which fork to use at formal dinners. Jake found himself opening up about his small shop, the struggle to keep it afloat in an economy where people were increasingly buying new rather than repairing old, and his dream of expanding to restore classic cars. There's something honest about working with your hands, he told her. Fixing something broken, making it work again. It's satisfying in a way that's hard to explain. Eliza nodded. I understand more than you might think. After my accident, physical therapy was all about reconnecting with my body, understanding its new limitations. There's a similar honesty in that process. By the time dessert arrived, Jake had forgotten to be self-conscious about his oil-stained fingernails or his second-hand shirt. Eliza listened to him with genuine interest, challenged his opinions with sharp wit, and shared her own stories with a vulnerability that touched him deeply. When the check came, Jake reached for it automatically, then hesitated, remembering where they were. Eliza noticed his hesitation. Let's split it, she suggested. After all, neither of us was supposed to be having dinner with the other. I can cover it, Jake insisted, though his bank account would suffer. Eliza fixed him with a direct gaze. I'm sure you can. But I'd prefer to pay my share. My father's money doesn't define me any more than your profession defines you. Jake recognized the pride in her voice, it mirrored his own. Split it is, he agreed. Outside the restaurant, the awkwardness returned briefly as they prepared to part ways. I'd like to see you again, Jake said, surprising himself with his directness. If you want to, that is. Eliza smiled. I'd like that too. Though maybe somewhere less pretentious next time. I know a great burger place that doesn't even have a dress code. Jake laughed. Sounds perfect. As he helped her into the taxi that arrived to take her home, Eliza handed him her card. My personal number's on the back, she said. Not my father's assistant's number. Jake watched the taxi disappear into the night, Eliza's card clutched in his hand, feeling like something important had just happened, something he couldn't quite name yet. The next morning, Jake was beneath a Chevy Impala when his phone rang. Sliding out from under the car, he wiped his hands on a rag before answering. Mitchell's Auto Repair. Is this the mechanic who doesn't know what sous vide means? Eliza's voice was warm with amusement. Jake couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. The very same. Though I googled it when I got home, so now I'm practically a culinary expert. In that case, I'm calling to offer you a job, she said. My father's 1967 Mustang is making a strange noise, and his usual mechanic is on vacation. I might have mentioned that I met someone who knows his way around engines. Jake's heart sank slightly. So this is a business call? Not entirely, Eliza replied. The car needs fixing, yes. But I was hoping the mechanic might be free for that burger afterward. Relief washed over him. I think that can be arranged. That afternoon, Jake found himself driving through the gates of an estate that made him whistle under his breath. The Harrington mansion sat on several acres of manicured grounds, with a separate garage building that looked larger than his entire apartment. Eliza met him outside, navigating her wheelchair across the smooth pavement with practiced ease. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, a stark contrast to her elegant appearance the night before, but no less beautiful. The patient is this way, she said, leading him toward the garage. Fair warning, my father might interrogate you. He's protective. Should I be worried? Jake asked, suddenly conscious of his work clothes and the beat-up truck he'd arrived in. Eliza shook her head. Just be yourself. That's who I'm interested in getting to know better. The garage housed 6 classic cars, each more impressive than the last. Jake tried not to gawk as Eliza led him to the Mustang, a pristine fastback in Highland green that made his mechanic's heart race. This is the Bullet Mustang, he breathed, running a reverent hand along the hood. Your father has a Bullet. Is that special? Asked a deep voice from behind them. Jake turned to find himself face to face with Victor Harrington, a tall, imposing man whose pictures he'd seen in the business section of the newspaper. Up close, Jake could see where Eliza got her direct gaze and the slight tilt of her chin when she was being stubborn. Dad, this is Jake Mitchell, Eliza said. Jake, my father, Victor. Jake wiped his hand on his jeans before offering it. It's an honor to meet you, sir. And yes, this car is very special. They only made about 325 of these in this exact configuration for the 1968 model year. Victor's handshake was firm. Eliza says you have your own shop. Yes, sir. Small operation, but we do quality work. Victor nodded, his expression giving nothing away. The car's been making a rattling noise when it idles. Can you take a look? For the next hour, Jake lost himself in the beautiful machine, diagnosing a loose heat shield and a minor issue with the carburetor. He was aware of Eliza watching him work, occasionally handing him tools and asking questions that revealed her own knowledge of engines. Victor observed silently before excusing himself for a business call. Your father doesn't seem thrilled about me being here, Jake commented once they were alone. Eliza sighed. It's not you specifically. He's been overprotective since the accident. Thinks I'm fragile now. You're one of the least fragile people I've ever met, Jake said honestly. She smiled at that. Tell him that. He's been trying to set me up with suitable men from his social circle, lawyers, executives, men with the right pedigree who won't take advantage of me. And what kind of man are you looking for? Jake asked, focusing intently on tightening a bolt to hide his nervousness about her answer. Someone real, she said simply. Someone who sees me, not my chair or my father's money. Jake looked up then, meeting her eyes. I see you, Eliza. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility, until the garage door opened and Victor returned. How's it looking? He asked. Jake straightened up, wiping his hands. Just a loose heat shield and some carburetor adjustments. I've fixed the immediate issues, but I'd recommend a full tune-up soon. This is a special car, it deserves to be maintained properly. Victor studied him for a moment. You know your cars, I'll give you that. What do I owe you? Jake named a fair price for the work he'd done, neither inflating it because of Victor's wealth nor discounting it to impress Eliza. Victor nodded approvingly and wrote a check. Dad, Jake and I are going to grab dinner, Eliza announced. Don't wait up. Victor's expression tightened slightly. Eliza, we have the charity gala tomorrow. You should rest. I'm having a burger, Dad, not running a marathon, she replied with the same firm tone she'd used with Richard the night before. Victor looked like he wanted to argue but instead turned to Jake. Have her home at a reasonable hour. Yes, sir, Jake replied automatically. After Victor left, Eliza rolled her eyes. Sorry about that. Sometimes he forgets I'm 28, not 18. He loves you, Jake said. I can't fault him for that. They took Jake's truck to a small diner on the edge of town, the kind of place with vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone, honey. Jake was relieved to be back in familiar territory, and Eliza seemed to relax as well, laughing more freely and telling stories about growing up as the rebellious daughter of a corporate titan. I was supposed to study business and join the family company, she explained between bites of her cheeseburger. Instead, I got an art history degree and was planning to open a gallery showcasing unknown artists when the accident happened. What stopped you after? Jake asked. The gallery, I mean. Eliza's expression clouded. At first, recovery. Then. I don't know. Fear, maybe? Everything felt different. I was different. But you still love art? She nodded. It's the one thing that still makes sense sometimes. Then you should do it, Jake said simply. Open your gallery. Eliza studied him. Just like that? You make it sound so easy. Not easy. But possible. Jake hesitated, then added, after Sarah, my wife, died, I almost sold the shop. Couldn't see the point anymore. We'd built it together, had all these plans. Then one day I fixed this old woman's car, nothing fancy, just a 20-year-old Toyota she depended on. The look on her face when I told her it was running again, that's when I remembered why we started the shop in the first place. To help people, to fix things. Eliza reached across the table and took his hand. I'm sorry about your wife. I'm sorry about your accident, he replied. But I'm not sorry I sat at the wrong table last night. Their eyes met, and Jake felt something shift between them, a recognition of shared pain, but also of possibility. Over the next few weeks, Jake and Eliza fell into a rhythm. He worked at his shop during the day while she consulted for art collectors and museums from her home office. Evenings and weekends, they explored the city together, Eliza showing Jake art galleries and hidden architectural gems he'd never noticed, Jake introducing her to neighborhood diners and the surprisingly vibrant community of classic car enthusiasts. Jake learned to navigate the world with Eliza's wheelchair in mind, discovering which restaurants had proper accessibility and which movie theaters had the best spaces for her chair. Eliza learned to appreciate the simple pleasure of watching Jake work on engines, his strong hands coaxing machines back to life with patience and skill. They argued sometimes, Eliza's privileged upbringing occasionally clashing with Jake's working-class pragmatism, but they always found their way back to common ground, both stubborn enough to stand their ground but wise enough to listen and learn from each other. Victor remained skeptical of their relationship, especially when Jake declined his offer to invest.